What boundary is asking to be communicated in your life right now? What would it sound like to say it clearly and compassionately? And what's one kind, simple action you can take to support yourself in holding that boundary? Remember, you don't have to get it perfect. You just have to lean into the next aligned and kindest choice. Communicating your boundaries is a practiced skill. You can learn, but you have to practice. And over time, it will become easier and easier. Although I will always be honest, there are times in my life where communicating boundaries is still pretty destabilizing to my nervous system, but I have much more trust that I will show up and not abandon myself in that discomfort. And that allows me to dust off and get back up and be brave enough to assert and communicate the boundary. Welcome to Grow with Robin Breckenridge, a podcast about stepping into the most fully expressed, aligned, and conscious version of yourself. Here, we dive into the real work of personal growth, establishing boundaries, understanding your patterns, building self-trust, healing emotional wounds, and creating relationships that feel safe, authentic, and fulfilling. I'm Robin, a life and relationship coach, and in each episode, we'll explore the tools, insights, and conversations that will help you not just improve your life and relationships, but truly transform them. You don't have to just go through it. Let's grow through it, and let's do it together. Hey, and welcome back. It's kind of wild to realize we're already at episode 14. And when I look at what we've covered together so far, I just feel so proud of this space and so proud of you for showing up. We've explored self-care and what it actually means to tend to your needs. We've talked about building self-connection and how to come home to yourself. We've broken down the slow, steady work of growing self-trust. And we've peeled back the layers of boundaries, what they are, why they matter. And we've walked through every category of the boundary pyramid. Yay! Giving you a new lens for how to relate to people based on emotional safety, not obligation. And if you've been listening along each week, I just want to take a moment to honor that. Seriously, this work is not light and it is not for the weak. It's not surface level, and it takes so much self-awareness and self-honoring to keep showing up each week, week after week, listening to these tools, reflecting, applying, probably sometimes scratching your head and being like, but Robin, how? And experimenting with all of them in your own life. And whether you've been here since episode 1 or you're just starting to weave this work into your world, I want you to know this journey you're on, it matters. It is so courageous. And honestly, I think it's sacred. And today we're stepping into one of the most vulnerable and powerful parts of this entire process. How do we actually communicate our boundaries? How do we share what we need with clarity, confidence, and care, without guilt or defensiveness or fear that we'll lose the connection? And that is what we are diving into today. How to speak your truth in a way that's clear, kind, and self-honoring, even when it feels scary. Because don't forget, sometimes we got to show up scared. We'll explore the emotional challenges of communicating boundaries, practical language that you can use, and a go-to tool that my colleague, Erin Watt, who has been on this podcast, taught me in one of our collaborations, which is called the Rule of 3. And that is for what to do when somebody pushes back or crosses your boundary. Because I got you. We're covering as many scenarios as we can. So let's get into it. And let's start with this truth. Communicating a boundary is one of the most courageous things you can do in a relationship. For sure, communicating boundaries was one of the steepest parts of my climb up the mountain. Because it's not just about words, it's about vulnerability. It's about showing someone where you end and where they begin, and trusting that you're allowed to take up space in that relationship. And for me, a lot of the time, it was like even having needs, like that wasn't a very comfortable place for me all the time. So it's vulnerable to have needs. It's also vulnerable to ask for help and support, or for someone to consider your well-being. For a lot of us, that's unfamiliar territory. Maybe you grew up in a home where speaking up led to punishment, silence, or emotional withdrawal. Maybe you had to overfunction to feel safe or earn love. Maybe you learned early on that being agreeable kept the peace, so you tucked your needs away until they stopped knocking, as if they stopped knocking. If any of that sounds familiar, I want to say this. There's nothing wrong with you if boundaries feel hard. In fact, I don't know anyone who thinks boundaries are easy breezy. And if someone tells you that they're super easy for them, please give me their contact information. I need to talk to this person. It wasn't my experience in this. So if boundaries feel hard, it doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're failing. It means you've had to survive in environments where self-expression did not feel safe. That's why when you go to say, hey, I can't take that on, or please don't talk to me like that, your body might react like it's in danger, because at some point it was. So today we're not just learning how to communicate boundaries, we're rewriting the meaning of what it means to have them. You are not difficult for having limits. You are not rude for needing space. You are not too much or too little for asking to be treated with care. And here's what I want you to remember. Advocating for your needs is not a betrayal of connection. It is what makes connection sustainable. Boundaries are not ultimatums. We've talked about this in another episode. They're information and they're invitations. They say, here's what I need to stay in connection with myself and stay in connection with you. So here's something that sounds kind of strange when we're talking about communicating boundaries, because you would automatically assume when I say communicating boundaries that it means to someone else. But where I'm going to start is that telling the truth to yourself is even more important than telling the truth to anyone else. That's where it starts. Self-honesty is the root of every clear boundary. So at the very least, if you can't get that out to someone else, then start admitting what's true for you to yourself. If you're saying yes and feeling heavy inside, your body already knows the truth. If you keep making plans with someone who leaves you drained, your nervous system already knows. If you're smiling through something that feels off or offensive, your intuition has already spoken to you in some form. There's a difference between not being ready to speak a boundary and pretending that there isn't one. The first is a pacing issue. Maybe it's just not the aligned time. Maybe you're just not ready yet. The second is a form of self-abandonment. And I say that with compassion. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. I've done it. I think we all have done it, that we didn't even realize that a boundary's been crossed. But that's where we start to get curious. And listen, if you didn't listen to the previous episodes, great idea to do that. If you start feeling resentful, if you're angry, if you're enraged, if you're just slightly pissed off, if you want to avoid someone or something, all really good signs that your body is trying to communicate to you that there needs to be a boundary. Healing starts when we're willing to say, at the very least to ourselves, I don't want this. This hurts. This no longer feels good. I'm pretending this is fine, but it's not. Now, I'll tell you guys a quick story. This is in regards to telling myself the truth. One day I found myself walking around my house, like doing errands or whatever. And I was thinking about something that was bothering me, a relationship where I felt like there was some boundary violations. And I was walking around the house and I'm like, I don't care. I don't give an F. I don't care. And then all of a sudden I stopped in my tracks and I'm like, what if I do care? What if I do give an F? By the way, one of my favorite people in the world is 4. I think he just turned 5. And apparently he really likes my podcast. And I said the F word in it. And then now he's saying the F word. So for a little while, I'm going to try to tone my language down. Although this is not necessarily the best podcast to listen to with small children, because I love him so much. Today, I'm not going to be saying the F word. But anyways, I digress. So I said to myself, what if I do care? And then all of a sudden, I was like, oh my gosh, I really do care. Like that part of me that was in denial, that is a protective part. We're going to talk about parts of self in future episodes. It was trying to protect me from leaning into my truth, which was what was going on in my life actually was hurting my feelings and it was bothering me. That level of truth telling opens the door to clarity. All of a sudden, when I admitted that I did care, I was like, okay, now I could do something about it. Now I think I need to step in and protect myself in some form. And boundaries are just the best form of self-protection that I've ever found. So keep in mind that when you tell yourself the truth, it might not mean you express the boundary today, but it means you stop gaslighting yourself. And that's really, really something. When you are honest with yourself, the way forward becomes clearer. It becomes more apparent to us when we are out of alignment. You stop trying to convince yourself to tolerate what your body has already told you is too much or unacceptable or not in alignment. And that's the real beginning. It's not the perfectly worded text. It's not the rehearsed phone call. It's not the boundary script that you take from me. The real beginning is when you stop lying to yourself about what's okay. From there, the communication becomes a reflection of the truth and not a performance or something that you have to get right. So let's talk about the difference between internal and external boundaries. Internal boundaries are the limits that you hold with yourself. And again, you don't need to say them out loud. You don't need to tell anyone them. You can if it feels relevant or aligned, but these are the boundaries in which we are telling ourselves the truth. Kind of like that simple boundary equation that I shared with you guys before. If you do blank, I will do blank. It is setting a limit and communicating it to yourself. So that can look like choosing not to pick up the phone, leaving the party early, not explaining yourself for choosing rest. And I have a really great example. I was just recently in Los Angeles and I had the amazing opportunity to meet a couple clients in person because I've worked with people now, so many people from different parts of the world and definitely all over the United States of America. Sometimes when I go places, I get to meet people that otherwise I've only known, maybe through Zoom. So I got to meet these 2 amazing clients and one of them was having a birthday party and invited me. And it was so wonderful and so special. And I got to the party and we were chatting. And then a short time later, one of them, the one that it was not his birthday, said, hey, Robin, I was so wonderful to see you and meet you in person, but I'm going to go home. And I was like so excited and got to, have time with him and he left. And then I think I had a session with him maybe like the week after, maybe 2 weeks after when I got home. And I said, hey, I just wanted to mention something to you. I was so proud of you. for being able to leave that event because, it was like your friend's birthday and I was there and I'm, in from out of town. And he said like, oh, I felt like a little guilty when I first thought about it, but like he had a long day and he was at his capacity. And he said, and then I thought maybe she'd be proud of me for honoring what was true for me and taking care of myself. And my goodness, was I so proud of him. So that was just like seeing this concept embodied in a client where like he didn't need to stay for me or because he felt bad or felt obligated to. It was just so lovely to be in his energy when it was an authentic yes. So he didn't need to tell me like, hey, I hope it's okay that I leave early. I've had a long day. He made that internal boundary with himself. Like, I'm at my capacity, I'm done, and I'm going to go home. Now, external boundaries, on the other hand, they require communication. Telling someone maybe you don't want to discuss a topic, asking not to be touched in a certain way, letting someone know you won't be available after a certain time. Now, both boundaries are valid, both are necessary, but external boundaries are where we tend to feel the most exposed, and that's where we need the most support. So before we dive into the tools and the scripts of how to communicate our boundaries, I want to offer you a lens that can help when you're unsure. And it's really getting curious and checking in. Is this decision motivated by fear or love? It's such a clarifying question. Are you avoiding a conversation because you're afraid they'll leave? Are you saying yes because you have fear of being judged or excluded? Are you staying silent because you don't want to, quote unquote, make it weird? Those are all fear-based decisions, and they often come at the expense of your own peace. But love can sound like saying no because it honors your bandwidth, asking for what you need because the relationship matters, naming what's bothering you because you want an intimate connection, not one built on hiding feelings. Fear will always tell you to shrink. Remember, it'll try to keep you, quote unquote, safe, but it will keep you a smaller version of you. Love invites you to show up. Fear is just an invitation back to love and trust, back to self-trust, back to trusting that you can be honest and still be loved, and that your needs matter. So when in doubt, always let love lead. Now that's one of the things that's like way easier said than done. Like I always remember thinking like, just live in the moment, right? Like, oh my God, so easy yet so complex. So shifting back into love and trust from fear, not always easy, but also that simple. I know that for myself, I lived a very fear-based life for a long time. And so as often as I can, almost like a game, I like to find where I'm operating in fear so that I can shift back into love and trust in whatever way is possible to me in that moment. So think about it. When we're starting to think about applying boundaries, communicating them, is your motivator fear or love? So let's talk about how to actually communicate boundaries in a way that feels clear, self-respecting, and not rooted in shame. Number one, clear is kind. The more vague we are, the more room we leave for misunderstanding and resentment. So instead of saying, I'm just feeling off lately, you could say something like, I've been needing more downtime after work, so I won't be available for our midweek hangouts right now. Number two, you want to use I statements. This keeps the conversation grounded in your experience and reduces defensiveness. So when we start conflict or communication with you always or you ... people automatically put their shield up, even really well-intended people. So instead of you never listen to me, try, I feel dismissed when I'm interrupted. Can we make space to really hear each other? and be able to finish our thought before the other person hops in. Number 3, you do not have to over-explain. A boundary is not a negotiation. You don't need to convince or persuade someone in order for you to set a boundary. Sometimes the most respectful thing that you can say is, hey, thanks for thinking of me, but I'm not going to be able to make it this time. And that's enough. You don't owe them more than that. However, you always owe it to yourself to be in your integrity. So I can't say this enough. Like, I know that sometimes when we're setting a boundary, we can feel super activated by someone's behavior, or maybe we're just like really sick of it, and know that that is not the time to communicate the boundary. If you are angry, if you are feeling resentful, like when it's super up and activated, it is not the time to communicate the boundary. It's time to breathe and pause and be able to return to that boundary at a time where you feel a little bit more regulated. Now, I know sometimes we don't always have that availability. But again, I do think typically we do have the ability to pause. Sometimes what's happening is other people's urgency becomes our urgency. And it's okay to say, hey, like they want a response right now, but I need a little bit of time to think about it. So if you are kind, which I will assume a lot of you are that are listening to this, then you just be kind, or you try to be the kindest you possibly can given the set of circumstances. And that's enough. So number 4, be kind, but don't collapse. Compassion doesn't mean self-abandonment. You can say, I really care about this relationship, and I need us to stop joking about that particular topic because it just doesn't feel good to me at all. The energy here is both open-hearted and self-honoring. And number 5, follow through. So important. A boundary that isn't backed with action is just lip service or a suggestion. If you say you'll leave the conversation if yelling continues, but then you stay, you're teaching them that you're not willing to follow through. And the follow through is what makes the boundary real. Keep in mind, I've said this in past episodes, that we have to back the boundary with energy and action. Let me tell you, energy never lies. If you are truly done with somebody's crap, that your energy will communicate to that person. And it doesn't have to be in an aggressive, combative way. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. Or I'm done doing that. I'm done tolerating that. I'm done messing around with that. Your energy will come through if it's aligned with your truth. Now let's talk about what to do when someone doesn't respect your boundaries. And this is where that beautiful rule of 3 comes in. And I will give credit to Aaron Watt, who shared this with me. It's a simple but powerful framework to help you communicate your boundary with increasing clarity and protect your peace if someone keeps pushing past it. This is a 3-step framework for what to do when someone doesn't respect your boundary. Step 1, inform them. Kindly, clearly, calmly state your boundary. 2, restate it. If they continue, restate the boundary more firmly. Step 3, exit. If it continues, you remove your energy. The exit is not punishment. It's congruence. It's choosing your peace. So here's an example of what this could look like. Hey, I'd like to step away from conversations about politics right now. It's been feeling really heavy for me. If they continue, restate the boundary more firmly with less explanation. Hey, like I mentioned, I'm not up or available for this topic. I'm going to ask that we stop talking about it and that you stop bringing it up. Now, if it continues, you protect your energy by stepping away. And it could sound something like this. I'm not going to keep having this conversation. I've already asked you twice. I'm going to step away now. This is not about control. It's about self-respect. It's not harsh. It's honest. You've spoken clearly. You've repeated it. Now you protect your peace. So another one of my absolute favorite tools and frameworks for communication is called nonviolent communication, or NVC. It's a 4-step process developed by Marshall Rosenberg that helps you speak with clarity and compassion. NVC helps take the sting or blame out of communication and focuses on real connection. It's a powerful way to say what you mean without aggression, guilt tripping, or emotional shutdown. There is a book. There is so much information out there. So please, if you're interested in this, feel free. The book is amazing. Like I said, there's so many resources out there online. Check it out. But here's how it works. To me, it's like a little structure or outline. And it starts with first, what I observed, what I feel, what I need, and what is the request. So here's what it looks like as an example. Observation. You describe what you observed without judgment. So that can sound like, when you raise your voice, ... The feelings part, state how you feel. I feel overwhelmed and tense. So let's go back. When you raise your voice, ... The feelings part, I feel overwhelmed and tense. The needs, you share the deeper need or value. Because I really need to feel emotionally safe in our conversations. And the request is to make a clear, actionable request. Would you be willing to lower your tone so that we can continue to talk and I feel safe? So let me put that framework together as just the communication part. When you raise your voice, I feel overwhelmed and tense because I really need to feel emotionally safe in our conversations. Would you be willing to lower your tone so we can continue talking and I will feel safe? The beauty of NVC is that it invites the other person into your world. It removes blame and focuses on building understanding. You're not just saying, don't do that. You're saying, this is what happens in me when this occurs, and here's what I need instead. You could adjust the tone to sound more like you. Like, hey, when our conversations get loud, it makes me feel a little unsafe because I value feeling emotionally calm when I'm talking to you. Can we try to keep things a little bit softer? Using this framework can help you stay grounded, especially in moments when it would be easier to react or shut down. It's a skill, and like all skills, it gets easier the more you practice. Now, NVC can be used for any type of communication, not just boundaries. So boundaries might sound like, hey, I noticed that I've asked you not to do something several times, and that topic is continuing to be brought up. And I feel really uncomfortable and judged when you bring that topic up. It's really important that I feel safe when I'm around you and like I can be myself and express myself. So NVC is an amazing tool for communication. Keep in mind, none of us have been taught how to communicate in a healthy way, which is why it's so hard and so hard for others that we're in a relationship with. So I highly suggest that you pick up that book, that you learn more about it. I know that they do lots of trainings. They do couples trainings. I've done one before. It's an amazing just framework to be able to plug something in when, just like all of us, we get a little bit overwhelmed and like, how do I express myself to this person? It can be used in work situations, in your marriage, in your committed relationships, in your family relationships, and also can be used when you are trying to communicate a boundary. So keep those in mind. They're amazing tools. And in the interest of time, I want you guys to go check out nonviolent communication on your own and learn a little bit more about it. And then I promise I will do more episodes where I include that tool and we can walk through it a little bit more. But I'd like to bring it all together by looking at what boundary communication might sound like in each category of the boundary pyramid, and how discernment plays a role in how much vulnerability, access, and explanation you offer. Because not every boundary requires the same level of emotional disclosure, and not every person is entitled to the same level of access to your inner world. Now, let's start with the sacred category. This isn't about communication with another person, because remember, in that sacred category, we're not putting human beings in. It's about protecting your connection with what is sacred to you. That would be maybe God, the universe, your inner knowing, your higher self, nature. So instead of communicating your boundaries to someone within this category, you might set boundaries around it to preserve the sanctity of that connection. So it might sound like, I need quiet time every morning to reconnect with myself and my source. Please don't schedule calls with me before 9 a.m. Or it could sound like, hey, Sunday evenings are my time to journal, reflect, and recharge, so I won't be able to hang out on Sunday nights. Now let's talk about the trust category. These are people who've shown consistency, care, and safety. You can go a little deeper here, and this is a beautiful place to use that non-violent communication framework if needed, especially for emotionally vulnerable conversations. It could sound something like, hey, when you canceled our plans last minute, I felt disappointed and a little dismissed because I really value follow through in my close relationships. I'd love to know if next time you could give me a little bit more of a heads up. Now let's talk about shared interest. This is where discernment really matters, because these are the people you may interact with often, like coworkers, family members, people you co-parent with or share a task with, but who have limited emotional access. Because remember, that shared interest category says we have a shared interest, but it is not rooted in trust. So there's a high likelihood you're going to be setting boundaries in these relationships, but with less emotional vulnerability. So it could sound something like, hey, I'd appreciate it if we could keep our work conversations during business hours. Or maybe it sounds like, hey, thanks for your input, but I got this handled. If a situation is emotionally activating and involves someone in this category, definitely pause before sharing your inner world. You are not obligated to offer vulnerability where there hasn't been trust built. So remember, that can be around sharing feelings that have a lot of vulnerability. If you're in the middle of a decision that feels like it has some vulnerability, like if you're working out whether you're getting back together with your ex-boyfriend or calling it official in your relationship, whatever it is, there might just be some things that you're not ready to disclose to that person, and that's okay. Now, cordial. These are acquaintances, neighbors, or people you run into occasionally. There's no emotional closeness here. Remember, we don't like this person or we don't care to have a deeper relationship here. And honestly, the boundary is kind of baked into the interaction already, because remember, the way that I teach this is that cordial means, hi, how are you? And that is the extent of it. So that in itself is the boundary. We really don't need to talk about how do we communicate a boundary here. The way that we show up is the boundary. And no contact. This is where communication ends. If you've decided someone is no longer emotionally or physically safe or aligned to engage with, your boundary becomes action-based. I am no longer available for communication. Please don't reach out. And often this doesn't require saying anything at all. It's energetic and logistical. Each level of the boundary pyramid requires you to check in with yourself. How much access does this person have to my emotional world? How much do I need to share to stay in alignment? Is my communication clear, kind, and congruent with the level of trust in the relationship? The more that you practice this discernment, the more empowered and peaceful your boundaries become. In fact, I was just listening to a clip on Instagram, and I can't remember the entire context, but the lady was saying that boundaries are very rigid and that it's a rigid energy. And I will agree that in the beginning, the pendulum kind of swings, and because we probably haven't been very rigid in protecting ourselves, it does feel a lot more rigid in the beginning. And then over time, your boundaries are no longer rigid. They're pretty fluid. The longer you live in your truth and the more that becomes your default, boundaries really aren't rigid. But in the beginning, they can feel like that. And for some people, maybe some listeners, maybe you're thinking your boundaries have been very rigid your whole life, and the pendulum needs to swing a little bit in the other direction, where We loosen them up a little bit. We let people in. But unfortunately, anytime we change behavior, it kind of swings in the opposite direction. And eventually it comes back to center. And I think that center is authenticity. So as we wrap up, per usual, I'm going to ask that you get curious and reflect on some things from this episode. What boundary is asking to be communicated in your life right now? What would it sound like to say it clearly and compassionately? And what's one kind, simple action you can take to support yourself in holding that boundary? Remember, you don't have to get it perfect. You just have to lean into the next aligned and kindest choice. Communicating your boundaries is a practiced skill. You can learn, but you have to practice. And over time, it will become easier and easier. Although I will always be honest, there are times in my life where communicating boundaries is still pretty destabilizing to my nervous system. But I have much more trust that I will show up and not abandon myself in that discomfort. And that allows me to dust off and get back up and be brave enough to assert and communicate the boundary. And then, of course, when in doubt, just do it scared. When in doubt, give it a shot and learn from it. If it came across sharp the first time, which sometimes it does, especially in the beginning, it's not about perfection. It's not about doing it right. I mean, truly, I say this a million times, you cannot do this work right or wrong. It's just about learning every time when you go, ooh, that came out sharp, or ooh, I didn't, advocate for myself enough. Okay, wonderful. What a great teachable moment for you to do it differently the next time. So if this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need support in this area. I really, truly think that the boundary pyramid is such a gift and such a simple framework that it's pretty applicable to anybody who is open or interested in setting boundaries in their life. And also remember that this work is not for everybody. There are people that might go, hey, that girl's selfish, or I think that her approach isn't right. Okay, that's okay. What resonates with you? So if you send it to someone and it's not their cup of tea, that's okay. Just means it's not for them or it's not for them right now. But your energy matters. Your truth matters. And the relationships meant for you will make room for both. And if you're wondering what's coming next week's episode is a super practical one. We're talking about boundary hacks and creating boundary roadmaps. So the quick, in-the-moment tools that help you hold your boundary when the pressure is on, and how to actually plan for boundary setting, where the rubber meets the road. Because again, it's one thing to understand the theory of boundaries. It's another to stay grounded in real life moments when your nervous system gets activated. So make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss it. As always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for wherever you are in the spectrum of doing this work, whether you are just curious, you're leaning in, you dove in, you've been doing this for years. I appreciate you and I acknowledge that you are here. And remember, boundaries are not about building walls. They're about building bridges that honor who you are and invite the kind of love and connection that feels safe and true. And of course, if we are asking for this in our relationships, please give it out too. I'll see you next week. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for being here and for doing this work. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Come connect with me over on TikTok at Robin Breckenridge or Instagram at Coach with Robin, where I share even more insights, tools, and conversations around boundaries, self-trust, relational healing, and so much more. And just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational and personal growth purposes only. The insights and tools I share are based on my experience as a life and relationship coach and are meant for general guidance. Each person's story is unique, and the nuances of individual experiences can't always be addressed in this format. What's shared here may not be applicable to every situation, especially those involving abuse, oppression, severe mental illness, or systematic harm. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please seek support from a qualified mental health professional or emergency resources. Thank you for listening and for showing up for yourself in this way. Take care, and I'll see you next time.